here, and we continue to see the winds now. Still up 50, 65 miles per hour here. This may be what we're going to get with here in Corpus Christi. Guys, please take the mixed minus out of my ear. Please take me that if you're back at the Weather Channel. Thank you. All right, stick around, guys. We got much more coming up. Mike Seidel is going to join us as well as we begin a new hour here on the Weather Channel. We're not going to give up with Harvey. We got crews all over Texas and even Louisiana pre-positioned to cover this thing for you as we continue to watch it roll in tonight. Really looking at the radar here, it looks like Rockport is going to absolutely take it on the chin. The last gust we've had at Rockport is 83 miles per hour. 83 miles per hour. They are just about to get into the eye wall in Rockport as this thing continues to just drift to the north. So moving slow now, as Brian said. It looks like it's going to just make its way inland, maybe as far west as Victoria, which isn't very far west at all. It's about maybe 50 miles or so, if you will, from the coastline, the exact coastline. But then it takes a turn and starts to head back or drift back, is indication through here. Meanwhile, all these areas start getting rain later tonight. San Antonio, they're already getting it. Something like San Antonio, Austin, up in toward Houston area, the Houston metropolitan area getting as well. So we have to watch this. Multiple floods are possible for the city of Houston. We just don't know how this is all going to play out. It's unforecastable by the computer models to tell us exactly where these bands are going to set up. Again, guys, my producer Steve Peterak did go down. And look at the Enterprise. It's right there. The Enterprise roof collapse, as was reported. It's really kind of an awning, it looks like, that has collapsed, a metal awning that has collapsed, as opposed to an entire infrastructure concrete roof. So I wanted to report that to you. That's what we've got. We do have some street signs that have come down as well. We can actually show you some video of that maybe a little bit later on. But you know, think about the wind it takes to push over a street sign, a heavy street sign. It takes a lot of energy. So we've had hurricane force gusts here in Corpus Christi, but this will not be Celia like we had back in 1970 with 125. All right, let's go up the road a piece of by about an hour as the crow flies, or as you get on the roads. This is Mike Seidel in Port Lavaca. Mike, I guess the biggest thing that you've noticed is a little increase in the wind, but more of an increase in the water, right?
Yeah, the water is really now piling up here. This is Lavaca Bay out here, and you get a sense of these waves now just coming over, and the seawall's just about been covered up. You can't see it anymore. There was plenty of seawall earlier. This is the front patio, and the wind picking up the water off the top of the waves. This whole area now underwater. It'll be interesting to see how high the water does rise. It's already come up at least 2 to 3 feet, I would estimate. That's not official, but estimation. And the rainfall I mentioned earlier, I just added up the rainfall just today alone. Since this morning, we've had about 3.13, if my math is right, 3.13 inches since this morning. We had another 7/10 of an inch last night, so we're almost to 4 inches of rain, and we have got a long way to go. I mean, we've got all night tonight and tomorrow, and then we're going to have rain into the middle part of next week. So you can just imagine the rainfall totals when we've already almost had 4 inches, and we haven't even taken the brunt in those bands around the eye wall, the outer eye wall, where you get the really heavy rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches an hour. The winds here sustained about 35 miles an hour. We've got some protection. I want to show you, I've gotten a lot of text and talk on social media. Be safe. Are you going to be okay? We are. This balcony, we're about 15 to 16 feet above the water level. This hotel was built 6 years ago, and when you build a hotel here in Port Lavaca, near the Gulf of Mexico, right here off the Lavaca Bay, you know you've got to build it sturdy, and they did all they could. This is concrete block here, steel, hard to get a cell phone call out of your room, and then the first level is actually there's no rooms there, and that's hardy plank, and they've got some walls that can blow away, but that's for safety purposes. But there's nothing hanging out here. We don't have any signs hanging that would cause us to be concerned about things blowing around. Now, if you look across Lavaca Bay, there's refineries over there, Port Comfort. I don't know if you can see the lights in the distance, but a sure sign that the power is still on here in this part of Calhoun County, which was under a mandatory evacuation as of late morning. Rainfall now not particularly heavy, but we keep an eye on the radar. And again, the worst is yet to come as far as the heaviest rain and the gusty winds here in Port Lavaca. Jim, Port O'Connor out there on the water on the barrier island, along with Port Aransas, Aransas Pass, Rockport, all those areas are going to get clobbered, even up towards Palacios. And it'll be interesting to see how high the winds gust in Victoria, because they've already gusted to nearly 50 miles an hour, well ahead of what could be an eye going over Victoria early Saturday morning. Reynolds Wolf will be live on the Weather Channel starting a little after midnight in Victoria. So we'll have the pictures from there. Tim, let me send it back to you in Corpus as we go to darkness here. We get dark here in the area around Port Lavaca. Let's hope the power stays on for everyone tonight, but it seems unlikely that it will.
Michael, we appreciate that report. Again, guys, we're kind of teetering here. We've been very steady, very consistent with 50, 60 mile per hour winds, gust occasionally the hurricane force here in Corpus Christi. This may be some of our worst weather, okay? Especially now as we see the storm heading north. Eye wall looks like it's going to go right in toward Rockport. Let's get the latest on some of the trends that we're seeing with this as this hurricane is going to be making its way ashore. I want to bring in a hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, to talk about this. Dr. Rick, last night, if you were a betting man, did you think that tonight we'd be talking about a landfalling Cat 4?
Well, we were talking about the possibility, because yesterday morning, when the forecast from the Hurricane Center changed upward after it rapidly intensified as a tropical storm, and the forecast for tonight was for Cat 3, we were talking last night about the possibility of something a little stronger in Cat 4. So a couple days ago, certainly weren't expecting this, but yesterday, this looked like a distinct possibility.
So what are you seeing now on the radar? I mean, we're starting to get into some of this outer eye wall, aren't we, down around near Rockport and Port Aransas?
Yes, we are. You know, again, the landfall of a hurricane is not the landfall of the outer eye wall. If we look at where the center of the hurricane is, when that crosses the coast, that's when you've got landfall of the hurricane itself. But we do have the northwestern eye wall on land already on San Jose Island, and that is headed toward Rockport. Now, again, the maximum storm surge and the strong gust winds might very well be on the right side of the hurricane to the north of wherever it is the dead center comes ashore. So points north from Rockport northward are likely to experience the greatest storm surge. In Corpus Christi, however, on the southern side of the circulation, the storm surge is not going to be as bad as it would be if the center was crossing to your south, Jim.
Dr. Now, I was looking at the radar from Radar Scope before I walked out here to do this particular block, and I saw the winds over Rockport at about 2,000 feet, estimated by the radar about 123 miles per hour. How much of that do you think could get down on the surface?
Oh, quite a bit. You know, again, when you look at radar winds, it depends on what altitude the radar beam is striking that band and that area of wind, and then we have to make some adjustments down to the surface. But when you've got maximum winds stronger than that, certainly a lot of that's going to mix down to the surface. And again, I think the strong gust winds will be on the right side. And so we probably haven't seen yet the strongest winds we're going to see, the Doppler radar winds from the land-based WSR 88Ds.
All right, let's get into the other side of this. I mean, this is a multi-hazard threat, as we've been talking about for days now. The rainfall has been leading the way all the way, even though that's not, you know, what we're seeing, at least imminent right now in terms of flooding, huge widespread flooding everywhere. But that is going to change, Dr. Knabb. When do you expect that to start?
Well, the rainfall is already starting. The storm surge yet hasn't reached its peak. So in both coastal flooding and inland flooding, you know, we haven't reached by any means anywhere near what the peak is going to be. You know, when it comes to the storm surge flooding, it's going to be maximized as the eye wall comes on shore, especially on the right side. And as the storm starts to move farther inland, we will start to see the rainfall rack up farther and farther inland. So points inland, it hasn't started raining yet, it will soon. But if you're in areas where it already has started raining on the coast, this is just the beginning of a multi-day event, Jim. It's really hard to imagine and hard to accept that the rain that is starting now in places like where you're standing, in places between the hurricane and Houston and places inland, that it could rain for days. And as this storm perhaps loops back around and comes back toward the coast, back up toward Houston as the current forecast shows, that means the current landfall area, where we're going to experience landfall here in the next hour or two, probably, is it's going to be a place where it's going to be raining for several days into Tuesday or Wednesday.
It really is absolutely unthinkable. And thank you, Dr. Knapp, for your insight. We will check back in with you again. As again, just to kind of recap here, Dr. Knapp talking about the western eye wall coming on the shore near the Rockport area here in Corpus Christi. We are not going to see the eye wall. We've seen, if you will, kind of the second and third tier bands out away from that come through, and that has allowed for winds to gust to 75 miles per hour. But we will not see the owl here as everything continues to slowly work its way north. And speaking of north, on the northeast side of our hurricane, we have a lot of east wind, bringing in big waves and a lot of water. And an area that is going to see some of those waves is certainly Galveston. Thank goodness for that seawall. Mike Bettis is in Galveston tonight to report. Mike, give us an idea. Again, Corpus to Galveston is on a 4.5-hour drive as the crow flies. How different is it there than what we're having here?
I mean, listen, winds are gusty here, no question about that, but we're certainly not going to deal with, in Galveston, what you're going to deal with closer to the eye. We're about, as the crow flies, about 150 miles away from the eye of Harvey, okay? Now, I'll give you that. I mean, the palms are blowing right now. There could be opportunities for power outages, but as far as what the seawall can do, it can hold back a lot of water. And since we're such a distance from the center of circulation of Harvey, the good news is the water's just splashing up at the bottom of the seawall, okay? That water would have to come up a solid 12 feet to breach the seawall and then come over the street here. And just voluntary evacuations here in Galveston for Harvey, and actually there's been a decent amount of traffic this evening. You can see folks are out this evening. They're driving around. A lot of the restaurants and businesses are open. The hotels are open. The city services did close down today, but the one real risk that I think we run here in Galveston is tornadoes. We have a tornado watch that goes through the night, that goes until 2 o'clock tonight, and we've actually had 3 tornado warnings in Galveston today. Brazoria and Galveston County have really, I felt like, been the target for tornadoes. I know that Dr. Knapp is still listening in here. Dr. Knapp, it feels like there's been a real concentration of tornadoes in a small area north of the center. Do you think it stays that way tonight?
Very well could. It's very common for tornadoes to occur in the right front quadrant of a landfalling hurricane, and that's exactly where Houston and Galveston are located. So let's paint the bigger picture first. Here's the center of the hurricane just offshore down on the middle Texas coast. Here's Houston, and here's Galveston. Now, if we take a look at, here's down near Rockport where the eye is. That's not where the tornadoes are occurring. Let's go up to the Galveston area. Here are those bands coming on shore. They're far away from the center of the hurricane, but these bands continue to come on shore, and this is where you can get those quick spin-ups. We've got tornado warnings between Galveston and Freeport, and there's more on the way. So it is not a very safe night to be out on the roads because it might be fooling you when it doesn't rain in between the bands, and then you get this nasty band come in, briefly, very heavy rain, and a spin up of a tornado. So we mean business with this tornado watch, and these tornado warnings will probably keep coming.
Hey, Dr. Knapp, I wanted to ask you, in respect to where Mike is, do you think it's possible that he has to wait for a potential, if some of the guidance is right, second landfall if it gains strength and gets some of the worst weather?
Yeah, we have to pay attention to that very carefully because how much we get up in Houston into early next week, in terms of wind and rain, will have something to do with how much time Harvey spends on land versus how much time it spends on water. We can't take this exact forecast track on this white line to the bank. I mean, if it doesn't go this far inland and it comes back farther offshore, then maybe we could end up with something stronger than the 40 to 45 miles an hour on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But again, I don't want to focus too much on the wind and the strength because regardless, you could have the rainfall totals racking up, whether it's a weak tropical storm, a strong tropical storm, or something else. You could still get the feet of rainfall in Houston. So I hope folks in Houston and Galveston don't start to think that if it isn't as strong as they thought it might be, that the rainfall in inland flood hazard is any less. That's still a very life-threatening situation for days to come.
That's exactly what I'm worried about. Some of these areas that are saying, hey, it isn't so bad. We've got a hurricane coming ashore. They're saying it's going to make landfall tonight, but we're not doing too bad. You know why, guys? Just like Dr. Nab said, it's going to sit here and spin and turn and make its way back to the north. And all we got to do is think back to 2001. Tropical Storm Allison. Sitting, spinning, and dumping very, very heavy rain. All those models are still forecasting unthinkable rain. Nothing has changed.